All right, it's another edition of Fox 10 Talks Sports. We're talking the fun stuff. We're talking NFL Draft. It's less than 24 hours away. Can you believe it? The NFL Draft is here, a day that can make or break a franchise, that's for sure. So if we're talking NFL Draft, might as well bring in a guy that's forgotten more football than we know, the Howard Balzer. Howard, thanks for joining us, man. Just give us your history on the NFL Draft. I saw a picture of you back in the day where it looked like you guys were at the ballroom of a Hilton with just a curtain on the desk, and you guys were barely starting to cover the NFL Draft and have it actually televised. How many years have you been covering the NFL and the NFL Draft? That's the picture right there. I mean, look at that. You got the feathered back hair. You look like you're ready to go out to the disco after the draft. 1981. What kind of memories does this picture bring back for you, Howard?
It's funny, first of all, Richard, is that my son cut it off several years ago and uses that picture on my Twitter. That's just me. It doesn't include Bob Lee, who was the anchor for ESPN. But the year before was the first draft that ESPN televised in 1980. Hard to believe it was 45 years ago. And it was fly by the seat of your pants television. We had no idea how this was going to go. When ESPN approached the NFL about doing the draft, and the commissioner then, Pete Rozelle, said to Chet Simmons, the president of ESPN, why in the world would you want to do that? Well, and here we are now, 45 years later. So it was pretty incredible, what it was back then. We didn't have highlights. ESPN had just gone on the air with their birth in September of '79. And so didn't have highlights of the college games. It was a group I was with in Bristol and another group in New York. And it was just talking all day. But the reviews were pretty good afterward. Everybody said, hey, that was a lot of people said it was a lot better than we thought it was going to be. And as I've always said, Richard, they decided to do it again the next year. So that was a pretty good sign of things to come. No one could have ever imagined then what it would be like today, but that's the way it is. And now it's an extravaganza. Back then I remember we used to do one mock draft. Whether it was me or Paul Zimmerman from Sports Illustrated, whoever it was, we do one mock draft in the last week before the draft. Now you've got hundreds, thousands. I mean, who knows how many mock drafts there are? That's how crazy that it's gotten with all this discussion in the run up to it. So it's great history. It was humbling to be involved in the beginning. I did it for 9 years, 9 years with ESPN, and it's always a great feeling to know that you were there at the beginning of this.
Yeah, and the cool thing is I remember reading your stuff at the Sporting News. Now you're with Cards Wire and USAtoday.com. And so you've been covering the Cardinals back when they were in St. Louis, right? So you know this franchise, you know this team. You've been covering them for years here in Arizona as well. Cardinals have the 16th pick in round one. You can get some value there, right? Jerry Rice, Joe Polamalu, just a couple guys that were drafted at 16 in round one. What do you think the Cardinals can get at 16?
I think there's a lot of options, and I think that's the reality of this draft. And as you go back, you mentioned those two guys, and I was looking at some others. I mean, Zach Martin, who just retired from the Cowboys, he was the 16th pick as a guard. Taylor Decker, who's still a tackle with the Lions, he was taken with the 16th pick in his year. Ryan Kerrigan with then the Redskins, a pass rusher. So this draft, what's interesting, Richard, is that what a lot will determine, it always determines who's going to be picked in front of you. But last year, if you look at it, there were 6 quarterbacks and 4 offensive tackles taken in the first 10 picks of the draft. And when you have that many quarterbacks, especially, it pushes other position players later. Well, this year, there might only be one. Maybe Shedeur Sanders will go in that top 15 before the Cardinals pick, but that will take guys at positions off the board that the Cardinals are probably considering. But I think when you look at this team, they should get a very good football player. And maybe they trade down, but whether it's a guard, whether it's a tackle, could be a cornerback, could be an edge rusher, an interior lineman. This is a team that doesn't have, I don't believe, glaring needs right now, but you're still looking for a good football player to come in and help your team. And so I think they could go in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, and you talked about trading down. I know Monty Ossenfort, the GM for the Cardinals, has done that several times, whether he was here or Tennessee or New England. And do you think there's the possibility that he could trade down and stockpile the picks like he's done in the past? Because he's even said the more picks you have, it's like having more lottery tickets, the more chances you have to get a guy that can be a game changer.
There's a chance, but here's the issue with it. Certainly when the Cardinals get to 16, and we assume that's what will happen, there could be 4 or 5 players that they would be very happy with at that point. So that's a great spot to trade down 3 or 4 or 5 picks, knowing you're still going to get one of those guys. The key is this, though, Richard. You need somebody who wants to trade up. And this draft, there's so many really good players. There's not a lot of true game changers or elite players, but there's a lot of really good ones. And so a lot of teams might look at it sitting at 19 or 20, whatever it might be, and say, well, do we want to give up extra picks just to move up to get a guy we really like? We can sit where we are and we'll still get a very good player. So I think that's going to be the interesting thing to watch on Thursday evening, is how many of those type of trades there are, because we could see, because of good talent, a lot of players bunched together, that we could see teams figuring, no, I don't want to give up my picks. I'm just going to let the draft come to me and still get a very good player.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, right? When you're in the middle of the draft, or even in the middle of the round, or later in that round, you have to wait and see how the draft board falls to you, right? So you're kind of, waiting, and is out of your control. But one thing that can also affect how you draft is what you did in the offseason. And the Arizona Cardinals were very active this offseason, not only bringing in players, but keeping key players as well, right? They went out and got Josh Sweat, who everybody saw have a fantastic Super Bowl, was all over Patrick Mahomes with the Philadelphia Eagles, right? So that was a great getting that guy that can get to the quarterback. They also extend Baron Browning, who they traded for late in the year, middle of the year, so they keep him. That's another linebacker. They get the Tomlinson guy from Cleveland, a defensive tackle. Do those moves affect what the Cardinals do in round 1, 2, and later in the draft as well, Howard?
Might. It might. I'm always the believer you can never have too many good players, especially at key positions, which certainly interior line and an edge rusher is. And so, with Tomlinson, he's an older player. He's on a 2-year contract. Calais Campbell comes in on a 1-year contract. We know he's not going to play that much longer. We don't think. And so those are the things that you have to look at. And we also know, it's always beautiful to look at it at this time of the year, isn't it? Because you got your whole roster pretty much healthy, but you just never know what's going to happen injury-wise. And at that edge rusher spot, you still have B.J. Ojolari coming back, Zaven Collins. And so, but, you can never have too many good players. And that's the way I think the Cardinals will look at it. And that's the way most teams look at it. So I don't know that the guys they've signed are going to change things that much, because, hey, Josh Sweat is a heck of an addition at edge rusher. They like Browning, like you said. He's only on a 2-year deal. And so I think that's what they'll be. They're looking at not only this year, but down the road, and building a good roster. But, offensive line, we've heard Jonathan Gannon say it. I've always been a believer in the offensive line. Andy Reid, Richard, said it during the Super Bowl when he was asked about Howie Roseman, the Eagles general manager, who he worked for when he was there. He said, the thing that I learned and was so important with Howie, and most teams believe in this, you've got to be strong in the trenches if you're going to be good. And Andy Reid said, if you don't have that offensive line, then it doesn't matter who else you have on offense, you're not going to be able to be consistently good. And so I think the Cardinals now, they could be looking at a tackle. Jonah Williams entering the last year of his contract, missed a bunch of time last year. At guard, Isaiah Adams was a 3rd-round pick last season. I think there's going to be a guard that comes at some point, and it could be at 16 in the round with a guy like Booker from Alabama. But you have to concentrate on that line, because that's the lifeblood of any team. And we saw it with the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Great defensive line, great offensive line. And we saw how they dismantled the Kansas City Chiefs.
And we always see one of the diamonds in the rough, right? Some steals. Tom Brady, 6th-round pick, right? 199th pick. Brock Purdy, Mr. Relevant, pretty relevant now. Kurt Warner, not even drafted. Could Cam Scatterbo be that guy where people pass on him and then somebody gets him 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th round? He ends up being one of those guys that becomes a game changer and a major contributor to a team. Where do you see him going, and what do you think he can do in the National Football League?
Great question. And I don't think he's going to last as long as the 5th round. Of course, you never know, because you have certain teams that are looking for running backs, and there's a lot of really good running backs in this draft. And I know everyone talks about, oh, Cam's not that, he's not that fast. Well, the one thing about him is, though, his first 10 yards, and a lot of people don't realize this, that at the combine, everyone knows what the 40-yard time is, but they don't talk about what the guy ran in his first 10 yards or his first 20 yards. The teams look at that. Cam Scatterbo was right there with all of the top running backs in this draft in his 10-yard split. So that shows in that first burst how good he can be. So I think he'll go third or fourth round at the latest, but it wouldn't surprise me, Richard, if there's a team that, and again, it depends on how the running backs go off the board. We always see it in the draft with runs at a position. I mean, last year at wide receiver, for example, you had the three guys started with Marvin Harrison Jr., who went in the first 3 picks. Then there wasn't enough, or I'm sorry, the 3 in the first 9. Then the next receiver didn't go until 23 with Brian Thomas Jr. But once he went off, there were another 6 receivers that went by pick 37. And so that's what happens a lot of times. Once that first, maybe not the first running back with Genty, but once, that next tier of running backs starts to go, teams start picking them because they feel they want one, and they don't want to take a chance of waiting. And so that could affect Cam in terms of when those running backs, when that run starts with running backs. But I think there could be a team middle of the end of the second round that they're looking at their team. They need a running back. They love what, the passion that he brings to the game. Wouldn't surprise me to see him go in the second round. But I still think the most likely thing is in the third or the fourth. But I'm saying it's going to be by the end of the third round that he's going to be selected.
Yeah, and I tell you, whoever gets him is going to get a great kid, a great character guy, and a smart player. And that's one thing that Kenny Dillingham has talked about when it comes to Cam Scatterbo, is that you can line him up in several different positions. He's played quarterback. He's played in the slot. Of course, he plays running back, and he refuses to go down, and he's a guy that makes the people around him better. So that's going to be cool to see where he ends up. I have a feeling it's going to be a team like the Steelers, maybe the 49ers, which would be kind of tough for Cardinal fans to see. But either way, I just can't wait to see him, get into the National Football League and see what he could do, because he's a great kid and he deserves this shot. That's for sure. Howard, we're going to talk to you throughout the week, and of course we'll get some more insight on you and the history of the NFL. I appreciate you joining us, and we'll see. If Cam Scatterbo goes in the second round, I will take you to Rudy's Barbecue once again, because I know you love the brisket there, and so you've earned it. That'd be one heck of a prediction. So thanks again for joining us, Howard, and it's always great to have you on the show. Like I say, you forgot more football than we know, so we'll keep checking with you, and I hope you guys keep checking in with us here at Fox 10 Talk Sports. Have a good one, and we'll be back before you know it.